Hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we are back with a Ashe basic guide. Now Ashe is probably the lowest damage ADC out of them all. However, she has the most utility out of them all. She has, of course, slows on her auto attacks, a huge AoE W which can hit multiple people and slow them at the same time. She has her E, which allows her to grant vision of an area, which is really useful for checking objectives or even scouting for gangs. And she also has a global ultimate, which can be steered, the giant arrow that can stun someone for up to 3.5 seconds, which allows you to make picks from across the map and help your team to secure kills. Okay, so now, with all that out the way, let's jump into the practice tool so that we can talk more about her skills and abilities. Okay, so here we are. So, Ashe's passive is honestly somewhat confusing to understand, but I'm gonna do my best to explain it, and hopefully you guys can understand what I'm saying. So first up, I'll need an enemy dummy over here. Okay, so the first part of her passive is on her auto attacks, she slows. So you guys can see here, you guys can see that blue aura around the enemies. Basically what's happening here is the enemies are getting slowed. So this slow is 20 to 30% slow based on your level. So even at level 1, it's a 20% slow. Of course, this slow lasts for 2 seconds, and that's already pretty huge. 20% slow is nothing to scoff at. However, this slow rate is affected by critical strike chance. So the more critical strike chance you have, the more slow it's going to be. So Ashe, when she crits, she doesn't actually deal extra damage, but she instead slows them for more and does doesn't do any kind of like does do a little bit of increased damage, which scales off of her crit chance. So basically what happens here, let me just go from the top. On base, you have a 20-30% slow when you attack normally. When you crit, you are gonna slow them for 40 to 60% instead of 20 to 30%. So basically, you double your slow. And based on your critical strike chance, you're gonna deal an extra, you deal an extra 10% against enemies that are slowed, and this is based, and this scales off of your critical strike chance. So at 100% critical strike chance, you're gonna do, of course, like 110% bonus damage against enemies. So this is of course affected by IE. So if you build IE on Ashe, you're gonna be dealing even more bonus damage. Now if you didn't really get what I was saying there, I don't blame you, because Ashe's passive is pretty confusing. Basically all you need to know is Ashe doesn't crit like a normal marksman. Instead, she slows, and when she crits, quote unquote crits, she slows them for even more, and she does more damage to slow targets the more critical strike chance she has. That's kind of the summary of her passive. So anyways, now let's talk about her Q. So her Q, of course, you guys can see over there, you have 2 stacks. You basically, every time you attack, you gain a stack, and you can stack all the way up to 6 stacks, which is the maximum stacks. When you activate it, you basically gain attack speed. As you can see, you attack faster, and you fire like 5 shots at one time into an enemy, like so. So her W, as you guys can see, launches a volley of attacks. And when you actually level up the skill, you guys can see here, I shoot about like 6 arrows here. When you level up the skill, you're gonna shoot even more. And when you are at max level of the skill, you're gonna have this huge cone where you are shooting like, I don't know how many this is, like 9 or 10 arrows. So like that. However, something to note is if you hit like multiple arrows on one guy, you're actually not gonna do a lot more damage. You're gonna actually do the same damage as one arrow like that. So here I did 80 damage. If I stand right here and he gets hit by everything, it's still like 80 damage, and you can't even hit him with everything, I believe. Let's see. Oh, you can actually hit him with everything, but it still does the same damage. So you want to like try to spread it out and hit multiple people with this. So this of course does apply the slow, and it acts as if you crit. So for example, you can see here that crit, it does that bonus damage that you do when you crit. So her E is Hawk Shot. Basically, it's a global ability. You guys can see here. It's gonna travel all the way across the map. You guys can see it's gonna be in just flying over like that. It's gonna grant you vision of wherever it flies over, and when you reactivate it, it's gonna explode in an area and give you vision for a couple of seconds, like so. So normally you want to launch this at like dragons or buffs, like that. So normally, like for example, you just launch it here for example, you want to check the dragon, so you're going to wait for it to go over the dragon pit, and then you pop it, and you're going to get vision over the dragon pit area to see like the health of the dragon or whatnot. And finally, you have your Enchanted Crystal Arrow. It's another global ability. It basically just stuns the person that it hits. Like that, boom, you see he gets stunned. Now, it can actually stun multiple people if they're standing really, really close together. So, for example, like that, I can actually stun both of them, but they have to be right next to each other. So, if there is like someone like even further behind, like this, for example, like just slightly behind, when I stun these two people, he's not going to get stunned, but he is going to take the damage and he's going to get slowed instead. So this ability is actually global. You guys can see I can actually launch it from here, and it's gonna go all the way down the lane like that. And basically when you do that, it's going to of course stun for longer the longer distance you go. So for example here, I can actually just press and hold to actually just look at the arrow. It's gonna go all the way here and stun the Nasus like that. So you can see that this Nasus is getting stunned for like 3 seconds or so because of the distance that we travel, whereas if we stun these people here, it's gonna stun them for about a second or so. So something to note is you can actually drive the arrow. So for example, I'm gonna launch it straight down mid. If you press and hold it, you can actually steer the arrow a little bit to kind of like guide it along a path. Like the width of what you can guide it is roughly the width of a lane, so you can roughly guide it to like this kind of width. You of course cannot just shoot it to top lane, and you can't, like for example, if I shoot to top lane, if I turn right, the maximum I can go to is like to the buff or like to the Rift Herald area. I can't like drive it to mid lane or to bot lane, so it's not like, you know, completely OP. And something to note is that when you're driving like this, you can't actually use your abilities. You can see I'm trying to use my Q, my W, it's not working at all. It will not actually allow you to use your W. However, if for example you have just shot your arrow, you can actually still use your abilities like that, and then you can go back to driving the arrow. But the moment you start driving the arrow, you can't use your abilities anymore. So you could do something like, for example, I'm launching the arrow straight here to help out my teammates. I'm fighting like this, and then I run away, I flash away, and then I go ahead and start driving the arrow. Although this is a very rare instance, but you know, I'm just saying that this is something that you can actually do. So, with all that out the way, let's now talk about Ashe's leveling order. So if I reset level, at level 1 you want to take your W for poke, level 2 you take your Q, level 3 you actually go for a second point in W, because in lane your E is not very useful as a combat spell, but on level 4 you do want to take your E to be able to check buffs and avoid getting ganked. Then you take your ult of course, and then you max your W, max your Q, of course taking out whenever available, and then you max your E last. Okay, so now obviously Ashe doesn't really have any kind of combos. It's literally you just, you know, launch your W whenever you can. When you have your Q fully charged, you can just use it, and then you just launch your W whenever else. You stun someone when the opportunity is right. No real like hard and fast combos when it comes to Ashe. However, she does have quite a number of tips and tricks. The first kind of like trick that I'm going to tell you guys is her synergy with items and runes. This is something that some people may not actually know, but she actually synergizes with certain items and runes. For example, weakness. Weakness activates on slow, and since Ashe's ability is slow, when you slow people, it's actually going to proc your weakness, so you're actually going to get that 5% extra damage. And it's also going to proc on items like Imperial Mandate, for example. So let me give myself more gold. And let me get myself an Imperial Mandate. So for example, over here, if I purchase the Imperial Mandate, because of the slow, it's going to apply the Imperial Mandate stacks, and when someone procs it, it's going to of course proc my Imperial Mandate. Another item it synergizes with is actually Black Cleaver. So this is something that not everybody knows, but Black Cleaver, it doesn't actually synergize with your slow, but it synergizes with your Q. So here, if I charge up my Q a little bit, you guys can see, if you take a look at the enemy dummy getting hit by the tower shot, you can see he doesn't have any Black Cleaver stacks, but the moment I hit Q and I blast him down, you can see he almost instantly gets full Black Cleaver stacks, because this gives like, I believe it's like 5 shots per auto attack, and Black Cleaver needs 6 shots to fully stack. So the moment I attack him, for example, auto attack Q, Black Cleaver is instantly proc. So Ashe has a lot of like item synergies as well as runes. So the second tip I'm going to give you guys is you don't actually need to fully stack your Q. So for example, like that, you have like, let's say 5 stacks or like 4 stacks, and you need to use your Q for the team fight. You don't have to actually stack it up till 6. You can simply just stack it up till 5, or you can even use it at like 2 or 3 if you really need that, you know, that enhance. So here, for example, if I have like 3 stacks, I can just hop it and just start attacking people. I don't need to have it at full stacks. So next thing is, of course, to use E on buffs, objectives, and bushes. So obviously I showed you guys, you know, checking buffs just now, but another way you can use it is to, for example, check bushes. So let's say if, for example, you're in lane, like here, and you don't know if there's anybody in this bush, so you can actually just launch your E there and check the bush to make sure there is no enemy in sight. For example, what could happen is, let's say an enemy jungle is over here and he's waiting to gank you, and here you are just like clearing minions and stuff. You can use your E and just check the bush. Another way you can check the bush is to use your W, because if your W hits people, here you can see if there's no one here, it's just all gonna fly through. But if, for example, there's somebody there like this, you can see your arrows get hit somebody, so you know someone's in that bush. But normally using your E is generally just better to just check bushes. And of course, the last tip is remember to drive your ultimate. So remember, don't just leave it like that. You gotta probably drive it and try to aim and see if you can hit someone, you know, with the ulti. And yeah. So it's pretty much it for Ashe's basic guide. Stay tuned for, of course, for the Ashe updated complete guide. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.